We are going to start our data collection and analysis unit by looking at populations and samples. A population is defined as a complete collection of the group of students to be studied. Not studies, sorry, typo. So an example would be all 7th graders in Garner. That's the population that we want to study. We want to ask them a question. We want to know some information about them. So we want to know about all the 7th graders who are in Garner, North Carolina. A sample is a part of the population. Now, the reason you would want to take a sample of something is if the population is too large. So because the sample is going to provide a snapshot of what the majority thinks without having to actually speak or talk or get data from everyone. So if we wanted to know something about all 7th graders who are in Garner, we could take a sample and talk to all the 7th graders who are at North Garner or East Garner, instead of focusing on all 7th graders in general. So the first thing we want to do is we want to identify the population for each example. And if the population is a larger population, we're going to give an example of a sample we could take. So let's take a look at the first one. A teacher is investigating the amount of time students in Adams Middle School spend exercising. So in order for me to identify the population, I write kind of big on this thing, so I'm going to use underlining to identify it. So the first one says, a teacher is investigating the amount of time students in Adams Middle School spend exercising. Our population would be students in Adams Middle School. Now, that's a lot of students. I mean, you're looking at least 1,000, close to it, if not more. So we wouldn't want to talk to all of those students. So a sample of that could be 6th grade students. And the information we gain from the 6th graders could help us determine things that we want to put into effect here at North Garner. So when we're wanting to know about the amount of time they spent exercising, we might focus on, I want to know what students at Adams Middle School, how much time they spend exercising, but I'm just going to talk to the 6th graders. And what they say will help me get an idea of what all students at the school think. For the second one, a scientist is studying the lifespan of grizzly bears in Katmai National Park. The population are grizzly bears in Katmai National Park. And we don't know if we can get all of them. Some of them might be hibernating, some of them might be hiding, some could be injured. So since we can't really guarantee that we're going to be able to speak to every grizzly bear in the national park, a sample could be to find and tag, say 30 bears. And based on this, we can use this as a guide for what the population of the grizzly bears at the national park are. Now, it's not all grizzly bears in general because there are grizzly bears all over the world, but we are not focused on all over the world. We're focused on just this national park. For the third one, the coach is asking players to choose a captain for their soccer team. Our population would be players on the soccer team. Now, we do not need a sample because it's possible to talk to a whole team of players and get an idea of what the group thinks and how the group feels. We don't need to slim it down to just a few people because our population isn't very large in this case, especially when you compare it to the first two. Now, random sampling is when you have a sample of a population that means each person has an equal chance of being selected, and it's really the most fair way to determine what the group thinks. So on the previous page when we talked about a possible sample for the amount of time students spend exercising, and I gave the example of 6th graders as a sample, 6th graders and what they do to exercise and how much energy they have is going to be very different from 7th grade and 8th graders. So choosing just one grade level isn't a good example of a random sample. So an idea might be if Mr. Butler writes the name of every 7th grade student at North Garner on an index card, mixes up the cards and chooses 100 of them. Or to relate it back to Adams Middle School, puts the name of every student on an index card and picks 200 of them. Each person's name was on the index card, so each person had an equal chance of being picked. Therefore, it's a random sample. Our examples are the manager of a bookstore is conducting a customer survey, and they want to know if each sampling method is random, and you got to explain. So the first one says the manager surveys his friends and employees. It is not random. Friends and employees are going to be biased towards the store. And the other thing is, not all customers are friends and employees. Number 2 says, the manager sends out the survey to 100 customers who were randomly selected from a customer list. This is random. The reason is all customers have the chance of getting selected because all the customers are on the list. The third one says the manager surveys the first 10 people who come into his store on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. This is not random. The reason is not all customers go to the store on those days during that time.